Hi, this is Shauna, the CEO and founder of Fuel Talent. One of the things I have loved most in my 25-year recruiting career has always been the stories that people tell. Stories of leadership, career choices, company ideas, and team building. My inspiration for starting the What Fuels You podcast came from being curious about people's lives and wanting to help share their stories. What path brought them to this place? What decisions did they make that led to failures and successes? Who influenced those decisions, and what lessons were learned along the way? I hope you enjoy the What Fuels You podcast. Sue is today's guest on the What Fuels You podcast. Sue is the first Chief People Officer at the media company Time, where she's focused on culture building, recruitment, and human resources, also security, facilities, and other operational areas. She joined Time in 2018 after several years with the U.S. Department of State and Defense and an extensive career with one of the world's largest private philanthropies, the Rockefeller Foundation. Sue is passionate about education, diversity, and inclusion, sports. She sits on many boards. She holds 2 master's degrees, and she's the loving wife of one of my besties, Chad. And she's an auntie. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you so much.
I'm so psyched.
This is happy to be here.
We're having like a little impromptu podcast, and it's crazy when you interview someone who you're friends with and who you've known for so long. Because in researching you, I was like, holy smokes, you have all this. You're layered. I knew that, but you have all these things. I've really known you as like Rockefeller Foundation and Time. But you had a whole like life before. Who knew?
So funny. And I feel like the first time I met you, we could have predicted into the future. Podcasts didn't exist, but you knew that when they existed, Shauna would be running one. You're the wonderful conversationalist.
Oh, that's sweet.
And
Thank you.
Let's tell stories.
I don't know if you know about this, but we will be shooting off some rapid fire questions.
Perfect.
First question. What have you read, seen, or listened to that's helped shape your life? That's a hard one.
It is.
And it's not really rapid fire, right? Okay, so a book or a movie. I know you don't watch a lot of TV.
You know what? This is going to sound funny. There was a made-for-TV movie about Nadia Comaneci, the Romanian gymnast who scored the first perfect 10 in Olympic history. And it came on when we were little. Mm-hmm. And I think she actually doesn't like the movie as a side note, but I watched it and I was living through this period where I was one of the only Asians in my neighborhood and very much put in a box. Like, you can't play sports, you're this, you can't do that.
You're supposed to like play piano.
Yeah,
and
exactly. And I was straight out of Central Casting. You know, I had the glasses and I was good at school and all of that. And I did play piano and I loved it. Anyway, I watched this movie and I was mesmerized. And they were doing all these sit-ups and V-ups from that day for years. Every night I did like 100 V sit-ups.
Oh, God, you're so perfect
push-ups.
to be married to Chad like, while he's doing his push-ups.
But it gave me such confidence, and that was what helped me do a lot of things that I never thought I could do.
We're gonna get back to the V-ups. The V-ups are hard. They hurt my back. Okay, what quality do you most value in a friend?
The truth.
I love that. And if you could have lunch with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
I would love to have lunch with my grandfather, who passed away when I was really young, but this is on my mom's side. And he was a literary critic at a time when South Korea was really going through a lot. I would just love to sit with him and hear what that was like and hear what my mom was like.
I've asked this question several times, and you're the first person who said one of their grandparents. And when I was asked the question, I said my grandmother.
Oh, really?
And a part of it that I said is that I want to talk about what my mother was like.
Oh my God, yes, totally.
Isn't that weird?
That's so great. I love that.
I
But
know.
she tells all these wonderful stories. He's such an amazing human.
Yeah.
And she tells all these fun stories about her being mischievous. I'm like, tell me more about that.
Yeah. What's your favorite place that you've ever visited?
One of my favorite places has been Libya. Actually, it's in a really difficult time right now, but I had the extraordinary opportunity to go serve there when I was in the U.S. State Department. It's a part of the world that I had never been to. It was at a moment in time between our two countries that was really interesting, and I was so grateful for the opportunity. I met amazing people who are thinking about their future, fellow colleagues who are really thinking about who we were as the United States in an area. This was back in 2005.
Wow.
So we had gone into Iraq 2 years before. Gaddafi had just given up his weapons of mass destruction a month before. What was it going to be like to rebuild relations with Libya? And it was just incredibly humbling and an amazing learning experience.
Wow.
Truly. So
I'm going to give you an easy
that.
one now. Are you ready?
Great.
Okay. So since you had an opportunity to live in Singapore,
Yes.
what's your favorite dish that you would eat most frequently in Singapore?
Gosh. Oh my, they were all so good.
Yeah.
I loved chicken rice, Hainanese chicken rice. It was so good. And you would get it at these hawker centers, which is basically a collection of street food in different places. And it was delicious. It's rice and chicken and greens. It seems so straightforward, but it was delicious.
I need to learn.
Love.
That sounds really good.
So good.
Okay, so you mentioned your grandfather. Are you your first generation, right? We talked about
Yes,
this
born
at dinner.
here. Yeah.
And so your parents are from South Korea.
Yes.
And what are they like? I would love to meet them.
They are. I know they would love to meet you. I sent them pictures of us hanging out. They are angels on this earth. I mean, they both grew up in Seoul at a time when the Korean Peninsula was not north or south, but just Korea. My mom came to the U.S. in 1967 and my dad in 1969. And they both came for educational opportunities. And they went through some pretty hard times, and they had known of each other in Seoul, but they officially met and married here in New York. And my dad, he worked in a corrugated cardboard factory. He worked the midnight shift. He has all these crazy stories. He lived on one Twinkie a day for the longest time. He tells this amazing story about how he lived down the block from a rotisserie chicken shop. And the rotisserie chicken shop was between his apartment and the bank where he had to deposit his check. But because he couldn't afford the chicken, and, rotisserie chicken smells so delicious, he would walk all the way around the block to go to the bank because
it's too tempting.
It was so hard. It was so hard. But and he met my mom, and one of the moments when he said he fell in love with my mom is that, he went to go pick her up and he opened the door and, he could see it's a small space. There's a mattress on the floor and maybe a lamp and that's it. But she was so proud of it. She wasn't shy or anything else. She was just really happy and grateful to be there. And they have never, in all of the ways that roadblocks were thrown up in front of them, or maybe they weren't treated so well, they never talk about that. They always talk about how we can give back and how opportunity is for us to really think about and hold on to and share with others and make a path.
Obviously, through my work, I meet so many people.
Yes.
I would say you're in the top 5 most positive people I've ever met. For real. Your energy is, I just would love to know what you're like behind closed doors. On a bad day, I'm going to call Chad and ask. Be like, what happens when Sue's in a bad mood? Is there such a thing?
I don't know. It's such a good question. I don't mean to be cheesy about it. I don't know. I'm so cheesy.
You literally jump up and down,
really great.
clapping
I do
every time I see you. You're just a happy person.
I do jump and down.
Is your brother like that?
He is much more grounded. He is.
You're grounded.
He is an amazing person, but he's less. He'll watch me jump up and down. He's not necessarily going to be the one who's jumping up and down, but he also is an optimist, and he has 2 little boys who are the lights of our lives, and they're growing up with that optimism too.
Are you more like your mom or your dad?
It's a great question. I think probably on the optimist side, possibly my mom. She just keeps going. She is Is she, because, I would call you definitely very career-minded. Yes.
And very focused, but not necessarily money-motivated.
Correct.
What is your fuel? What gets you out of bed in the morning every day?
I think the chance... This is also going to sound really cheesy.
We just have to here's a little caveat. Everything will sound, I would say not cheesy, but it will sound positive because that's who you are. Don't apologize for that. It's one of your best qualities. It's great.
So nice of you to say.
It's true.
I think it's the opportunity to make something good happen.
And was that you in middle school and grade school and high school?
I think a switch sort of flipped kind of around the time of the Nadia movie. But I remember growing up and again, being so grateful for my parents. But at a time when I was teased a lot and bullied a bit and all of that stuff that happens when you might be the only one who looks like you in a neighborhood.
Your
And
school,
kids
your school was all non-Asian?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And so it was all
Public school?
Public school. And to be super clear, and I'm always really careful when I talk about this, wonderful friends also. But then there are kids who are like pretty cruel.
If you listen to the podcast, and we have like a handful of people who listen to more than one,
yes.
I'm just kidding. But there are people who are like, I listen to them. I'm finding that there's a consistent theme. A lot of people were bullied.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, it is a little bit like a switch goes off. They're like, I'm not going to be a victim.
I'm not going to do. And it's so interesting because I remember this happening when I was like 9 or 10, and what goes through a 9-year-old's brain. And it's sort of like, I'm done with the boxes, like no boxes, like it's just, and I remember, do you guys remember the physical fitness test in school?
Yes, we have to like climb the rope or do the pull-ups.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So we had that in 5th grade, and it was shortly after I watched the Nadia movie. I'm like, I am going to crush this physical fitness test. And so, and I did pretty well. And and I was like, I love this. I love sports. People have told me, like all these peers have told me, like I can't, I'll be the last picked for a team, or like sports isn't for you because of what you look like or what they think. I'm like, I love this. I'm going to crush it. And it's just, so that was a big moment. Sports has been an incredibly liberating, wonderful
What sports
platform.
were you into in high school?
Track and field. I did the hurdles and the sprints and the jumps, and soccer. So those 2 sports were my sports in high school and college.
Yeah. And when did you learn how to rock climb? Because we're going to get into that, but that's so badass. That's next level. Like track and field is super baller, but a female rock climber?
Oh my gosh.
That's like...
I'm really good at teaching beginners. But I got into it because my friends were into it in college, and then I moved to Washington, D.C., and there's actually a lot of great rock climbing right around the D.C. area. You wouldn't necessarily think of that intuitively, but my buddy and I moved down there. We'd just done some hiking and mountaineering. We're like, let's go figure out the whole rock climbing thing. There was an overnight trip to West Virginia. We went, and we were like, this is awesome. We did this rock climbing, like the beautiful fall foliage, and then we were driving back to D.C., and we literally, like, we didn't go home. We went straight to the REI and went and, like, picked up all this equipment. I know.
You might have to move to Seattle from New York.
I might have to. So that's how it started. And then we went every weekend. And then it's a wonderful, it's not only puts you in beautiful places, it's really cathartic because it requires all of your focus. It requires you to empty your mind. So you're focused on your next move.
Not falling.
Focused on not falling. And it's also one of those activities where the obvious is not necessarily the best way forward, which I felt like was such a good metaphor for life, right?
I love that.
And I learned a lot, and I love it.
Are you still doing it?
No, I wish I mean, not enough. It's like a resolution to go back and do it more.
Yeah, that and less working and more TV.
And exactly, yes, exactly. All good goals.
More TV. And so you ended up after high school going to Princeton. I mean, that's like, it's not like, oh, I'm going to go to college and be first in my family to go to college. It's like, I'm not messing around here. I'm going to go to Princeton. How did you even know about Princeton?
So
and was there a college counselor at your school, or did you just have incredible grades?
I knew about Princeton because we ended up moving to a town not far from Princeton, and my parents had known about it, and I felt like in high school I wanted to go to a school that wasn't super big. Sort of
How big is
manageable.
Princeton?
At the time, it was just under, I want to say it was like around 5,000 undergrad. I think it's grown a little bit now.
I didn't realize it was that small.
It's small. Undergrad. And there's graduate schools too, but I think another thing that was attractive to me about going there was we were told you really, like, the professors will teach your classes. You have access to all of these extraordinary humans who are doing really cool things in a school that's a little bit smaller. And it also doesn't have a business school or a med school or a law school. It's very focused on a lot of other academic fields in terms of their graduate school program, in addition to an awesome public policy school program. So it's a little bit of a different dynamic. These are all the things that they told you. And like, as I was a senior in high school, I'm like,
what did you want to be when you grew up, when you were like a junior?
Oh my God. I wanted to go to the Olympics, and I wanted to be a sports medicine doctor. That lasted one semester.
Did you take biology classes?
I did.
And you're like,
I
yeah,
did.
not for me.
I did. I loved it, but I was like, maybe. And one of my best friends to this day, she and I were in this biology lab on like Wednesday nights, and we were sitting there with like these crickets, and we were putting white out like on the crickets because that's what they told us to do, to like track the cricket movements. And we looked at each other. We both wanted to be doctors, and maybe one day still. But we're like, maybe, she ended up majoring in history, and I majored in political science.
Yeah, you're like, okay, check that box. So you chose Princeton because it was close to the school, and was there an idea that maybe if you didn't go there, where else would you want to go?
I was looking at I was thinking about going far away. I was looking at Princeton, I was looking at Stanford and Cornell. And so those were like three.
Oh,
of
if you had
the
gone to
schools.
Cornell.
I know, who knew?
Yeah.
I mean, so I was looking at those three schools.
Chad, Sue's husband, went to Cornell. My high school friend, my childhood friend.
Yes.
So you may have met there.
Oh, we
Who
might
knows?
have met there. I know, we keep saying like, what if? Like you play the what if game. But I wanted to run track, and so I was looking at that as a criteria, and I just really...
Did you run track at Princeton?
I did, not very well, but I loved it.
See, it keeps getting better and better. College athlete at Princeton. Okay. Is there anything that you failed at so far? I'm dead serious.
I was not very good at
what
track
are you
in
not
college.
good? But what are you not good at?
Oh my God, so many things. I'm like fantastically mediocre at so many things. So like seriously, because I will try everything. I love being around passionate people.
Yeah.
And if you tell me that you're doing this, I'm like, I'm going to take guitar lessons with Josh. I'm going to I love trying all of that stuff. And so, which means like you can't be an expert in all of that.
Yeah. You got to just be like a generalist.
Yes. Yes.
I love that. And so when you were in school, when you decided I'm not going to track crickets using whiteout,
yes,
and I don't want to be a doctor, what made you decide to study politics?
I loved the courses that they were offering, and I loved the conversations that we got into. And I think being in an environment where you were encouraged to think about the world differently. And that's what I loved about college. I mean, it really was a place for me that you could go and you had this freedom, and not only the freedom, but the permission and the encouragement to be like, maybe that's not the way it should always be, or like, and so I found a lot of that energy in the political science classes. And I've always also been really fascinated by the world. And I think in those politics classes, you were thinking about global affairs and all these dynamics that create and shape the world that we see today and where it might go tomorrow. And so I loved it. It was really fun.
And what do you do to stay informed day to day now? I mean, given all the fake news, and obviously now you're in the media industry.
Yes.
What else do you ingest every day as far as media consumption?
I read a lot of Time.
Good girl.
Thank you. And I actually read USA Today, the app, every day. I think it's a really accessible list of what's happening in the world. I listen to a few podcasts here and there. I also just have conversations because I want to know what people are thinking about and where they're, because I feel like you can get all of this influx or this infusion of news from different sources, but I'd love to know how people are digesting that and what they're thinking about and what they're telling their kitchen table and all of that. So a lot of conversations.
Yeah, I love that. And so tell me what you did right when you graduated and how you ultimately decided to go back and get two master's degrees? Is that a mistake?
It's possibly.
No, it's in my research. You have two? Two, literally? You're nodding your head.
I am, yes.
Okay,
yes.
so tell me about that. How did you decide all of this?
So I, after college, I went, spent a year in South Korea, which was a really wonderful way to connect with my roots, with a fellowship program. And then I came back and worked in the nonprofit sector again, thinking about how people make a difference in their various communities. One was a program run by alumni of Princeton University. Another was an organization based in DC focused on homelessness. And as I thought about what I wanted to do and the impact that I would love to maybe try to make and the people I wanted to learn from, my senior thesis in college was on French nuclear testing in the South Pacific, and it was based out of this wonderful summer internship that I had at the U.S. mission to the UN, which is one of the outposts of the U.S. State Department. And I just thought the conversations there were so interesting. And I was like, I think I kind of want to do that. I want to go and learn about warm and fuzzy things like security and defense in the world. Yeah, but I just think there's so much fear and collision and animosity and tension in the world, what are the ways that we're managing that, and what are the ways that we could possibly bridge those gaps? And so I wanted to go back. So my first master's degree was at Columbia, a wonderful program in political science. And at the end of that, was lucky enough to what's called the Presidential Management Fellowship Program, which I encourage everyone to apply to, that allows you to compete for certain slotted jobs across the federal government. And I was interested again in security and defense, so I applied to the State Department and the Pentagon, was incredibly lucky to get one of those slots. It's a 2-year fellowship that you rotate around and learn about how policy is made, the difference that you might want to make. And
where did that take you?
It's
geographically.
Geographically, it started in D.C. My class and I, our first day was September 10th, 2001. So it really changed our worldview in terms of this area that we wanted to go into and the difference we wanted to make. And we saw how really amazing people got together to think about how to manage that moment and move forward. So in the world, that took me to D.C. I did a rotation at the Pentagon, came back to New York at the U.S. mission. So that was super fun. Went to Libya during this, after I left the fellowship, but stayed in the State Department and worked in all sorts of wonderful offices. What was then the Bureau of Arms Control, so working on multilateral arms control, chemical, biological, and nuclear. At the Pentagon, worked on bilateral nuclear issues with Russia. Came back and worked on communications and congressional issues and sanctions. Wow. And a lot was going on. And I just learned from incredibly smart people. And to think about, my parents came to the U.S., looking to build a life for their family. So to be able to represent the American flag and to go into an office every day where you were lucky enough to work with people who took that responsibility incredibly seriously was a real privilege.
Do you think that you're ever going to run for office?
I don't know about that.
You're one of the only people who I know that actually
people running for office.
No, but in my mind, I'm like, you would win.
I don't know.
You would. I can't
I'm happy
imagine.
to support others.
You'd be so good.
You should run for office.
Oh, no, we won't do that. But so all of this shaped you. I mean, I know that the bulk of your career has really been Rockefeller Foundation.
A lot of it, yes.
And so it seems like almost like a pivot. How did they find you?
How did that happen?
Yeah, how'd that happen?
Yep. It's so I was in New York with the State Department again at the U.S. mission, and Chad and I were married, so it was the best. And we realized we were probably going to be in New York for a little while. And I thought, okay, maybe I'll look around and see what other opportunities there are. The people whom I admired most in the government were those who had a real diversity of experiences. So they can bring all of those perspectives to bear on any particular challenge or opportunity rather than just one way of thinking. So I was like, all right, let's cast the net wide. So I looked at a whole bunch of places. Was lucky enough, this wonderful woman named Marilyn Maklowitz is an extraordinary headhunter, talent recruiter in New York. She is also an alum of Princeton, posted this cryptic International Foundation is looking for someone to work in the office of the president and apply. And so I did. Long story short, was able to get the job. And so the first job that I had there was being special assistant and director of the president's office to this extraordinary woman named Judy Rodin, who was the first woman to lead an Ivy League institution, the University of Pennsylvania. She broke barriers her entire career. And so to be able to learn with her and work alongside her was like daily clinic.
Would you call her a mentor?
Yes, for sure.
And are there other mentors that you've had along the way?
Yeah, there are. I would say they come in all different shapes and sizes. One of my first mentors, aside from my mom and dad, are my track coach in high school, Tom Harrington, Coach H. He just taught me to think differently and to think big and to believe in myself, and really was an extraordinary leader and coach. Others in the State Department, one of my amazing bosses was Ambassador Mark Grossman, who just every day personified integrity, no matter how difficult the situation. And no matter what the day brought, you just knew he led with integrity.
Coming back to Rockefeller Foundation, for those who don't know, what is the mission of Rockefeller Foundation and what was your ultimate role between when you started and when you left.
Yes, no, it's great. I mean, it really is to promote the well-being of humanity was the entire premise at the beginning. It was one of the very first foundations in the U.S.
And how
world.
big is the foundation?
It is, their endowment is a little over $4 billion, I'm going to say. And the foundation staff, when I left, it was it was around 200. It's probably still around that range. They, at the time I left a couple years ago, were headquarters in New York, Africa office based in Nairobi, Asia office based in Bangkok, and really a history of working on many issues, including most recently climate, food security, agriculture, public health. They were one of the leading forces behind creating schools of public health around the world. Just really forces for change across a wide variety of areas. They've gotten into food and food waste, and another area is energy and power and making sure that those who don't have access to that energy grid are able to have access. And so they work around the world.
And so you started in the office of
the president,
the president. And then I know that you guys ended up moving to Singapore, which we were sad because we were in New York at the time and we were like, don't go. But what a cool experience.
It was amazing.
And what took you there and what did you do while you were there?
So Chad's job brought us there, and they are, they're amazing. They had us look at various cities in Asia, where would be one that we felt that we could really,
is it true that it's super clean there?
It's very clean.
I mean, I feel like that's what everyone talks about is how clean it is, but there's other things.
There are. It's amazingly clean. It's really diverse. It's this wonderful, people often say when they live there, oh, it's great because you can travel all over Asia. But Chad and I did that too. We were very lucky, but we also found that there's so much to explore in Singapore. I mean, there's rainforest. We both joined sports teams. We both did a bunch of stuff there. And the people and the history there is incredibly rich. So we loved it, absolutely loved it. And while I was there for the first part of the time, I was still with Rockefeller. I was commuting up to Bangkok, helping to manage that office and to transition the new leader there. It was great. And he's still with the foundation. He's amazing, Ashvin. And then I rolled off of Rockefeller, settled in full-time in Singapore, did join some nonprofit boards, was trying to figure out the social impact space there, which was really at an energizing moment. So worked on an impact investing social enterprise that started up there called Asia IIX, and also dipped a toe into acting, which was really, really fun.
I loved that when I came across that in my research. And on the board thing, so many different board roles that you've had.
Really lucky.
How do you decide what boards to join and what do you see as the role of a board member?
I think I have to be passionate about the topic. I mean, just really, do I believe this organization or this group of people or is really genuinely going to make a difference? And can I help them make a difference? And so I've loved the boards I've been on, and I do see the role of a board member. I didn't realize this when I first joined a board, which was, I don't know, I think in my early 20s. It was the Special Olympics of New Jersey, which was a wonderful group that I've been involved in, and then I learned what it meant to be a board member. It's really to help give advice, to help think about what does impact really mean? What is the bottom line? And how can we all help you get there? And also to be fiduciary, stewards, to really make sure that things are being done in an accountable way, and really help be a sounding board, but not just window dressing, really be there. And the best boards like to tell the truth, right?
Of course.
Is this working? Is it not working?
Yeah.
How can we help us get there? And so
tell me about the acting thing. You touched on that, and you went there and said, hey, I should find an agent? Or how did you?
So I went there, and I've always had such deep respect for the acting. The Oscars were last night. I mean, I've always had such deep respect. And it's and so when I went there and I had a little bit more time, and a friend of mine was running a theater called The Substation, and they were doing acting classes. So I'm like, oh, well, I'll go support The Substation and I'll go take some classes. Anyway, it was really fun, the class. And then I thought it'd be the end of it, because as much as I love people, I'm fairly private when it comes to like online presence and all of that. And to be an actor, you got to put yourself out there. You got to put headshots out there. You got to put like stuff. I was just like, I don't know. Anyway, one of my acting classmates was getting some auditions and was doing some stuff. And so anyway, we'd get together every once in a while. I'm like, that sounds really fun. So I was like, okay, deep breath. And I did it. And one of the commercials is still running in Singapore.
Wait,
we were just there in November, and it's still running, which is super fun. And I loved it. And the best thing I learned, which I was not expecting is that while I've always admired actors and always thought to myself, gosh, they're so good at like pretending to be someone
Oh, yeah.
else,
So
right?
brave.
So brave. But then I realized even like this tiny pinky toe that I dipped in, that actually it's like the rest of us who are acting every day. We're like, this is my title, this is pedigree, like blah, blah, blah. Like if you're an actor, and you're auditioning or you're in a piece, like they don't care where you went to college, who you had lunch with that day, what your glossy resume says. Like all they want to know is how much truth can you bring to this moment in service of the story that you want to tell. And that's it. And it just was such a, what I found to be a really beautiful revelation. I was like, oh, they're actually, you know what? They're not acting, air quotes. They're telling the truth, and how do you strip everything away and tell the truth? And those lessons I try to carry with me.
I never thought about it like that, but it actually makes total sense to me. Most people, I mean, by the time that you left Rockefeller, you left there as chief people officer, correct?
When I was there, I had shifted from that role to I was leading some of their facilities and services and also working on I need to keep this in there, but Rockefeller is this extraordinary convening center in Bellagio, Italy, and so I was working on the New York side of that, on like programming and support.
Wow.
It was so inspiring, so inspiring.
I just want to be you.
No,
like,
no.
Can I have like an eighth of your job opportunities?
Vice versa.
Oh, that is so cool. So a lot of people would have just said, hey, I've got a good cushy situation. I'm proven here. I've been here 10 years. The executives all love me. What made you open to leaving and to considering time, and how did that happen?
Yeah, it's I mean, I still love Rockefeller. It's changing the world, and
Of course.
just to get up and be able to do that with brilliant colleagues. So loved it there. And then I got a call in the fall of 2018 from someone at Time, and they said, the sale is going through. We have this opportunity to really grow and be our own thing. And one of the first things we need to do is think about our people and our culture and our hiring and recruiting and all of that. Would you want to come? Or would you want to be considered, I should say. And I was like, tell me more. Because I loved Rockefeller and had been so fortunate to move around in a lot of different functions. I had a few conversations with various members of Time, and it took probably like 8 nanoseconds for me to be like, this sounds like the opportunity of a lifetime. And it really... There are probably 3 themes that I look for in an opportunity. This is more retrospective rather than intentional. But as I think about it, 1 is, again, being around passionate people. 2 is being around a community of colleagues who think about the world, are so open-minded, and also want to bring the world internal, just really welcome a diverse and inclusive set of conversations and perspectives. And then 3rd, being mission-driven, being part of something that's bigger than any of us. And I felt all of those elements tremendously with the opportunity with Time. And so one thing led to another, and I met more people, and then I was really lucky to get the opportunity.
So really, all of this has shaped you in so many different ways and brought you to the place where you are now.
Yes.
Where you're at Time.
Yay!
And tell me about how Time has changed. I feel like it's an institution.
It totally is.
And it really is very Americana,
Yeah, no, completely. We're a 97-year-old startup, as we like to say. And we, as of a little over a year ago, for most of our history, we were one title amidst a stable of titles underneath a parent company. And what we have the opportunity now with extraordinary ownership and leadership is to be our own thing. And so we spun out at the end of 2018 and are really building our own, the infrastructure for our own media company, our own events, and how we want to show up in the world, the stories that we want to tell, the vehicles through which we want to tell them, getting more into events, thinking more about multi-platform kinds of experiences, building a studios business. There's so much. What I love every day, one of the many, many things I love every day, is just being around people who wake up in the morning wanting to shine a light on the stories that make this world go round, and wanting to have the courage to shine that light on not only the stories, but the storytellers. And how do we do that in the best way? And Time is an institution wonderfully in the U.S. and also around the world at a time where there can be a lot of mistrust in media and a lot of confusion and a lot of animosity towards media. We feel really responsible for stewarding the trust and integrity and accessibility that Time has built over its almost century of history.
Almost century.
So, I know. Isn't that wild?
Nuts. And so what's your role there? What are you hopeful about in the coming year for your role?
Oh, it's
and
great.
For Time.
I love it. So my title is a Chief People Officer. My role is to do everything from thinking about our people and culture every day. It comes our recruiting, the breadth of HR functions, really thinking about talent acquisition and retention, engagement. What makes what are people excited to do every day? We are small enough. We're just around 275 right now worldwide, so we're small enough that we can really think about, okay, you, staff member of Time, you've chosen to be with us right now, and we've chosen you. How do we honor this moment in the best way? How do we make sure that you have the clarity and everything you need to get your job done in the best way possible? And what are your hopes and dreams? Where do you want to go? And how does this fit along that journey? So we're very much still in building mode, because as we spun out as a new company, lots of systems and infrastructure that we need to build around our core editorial product and our staff. And so we're what
do you mean when you say core editorial product? You mean Time magazine?
So, it's our magazine, our website, and our staff. So our writers, our journalists, our reporters, our editors, who have been extraordinary and really the core of our content creators. And around that, we're building, my function is new, our finance function is new, our legal function is new, building up our sales and marketing infrastructure. It's been really exciting.
What was it before?
It was part of our previous parent companies. So our parent companies would have a whole infrastructure that would serve all of the multiple titles. So previously, Time Inc., which was sold to Meredith, which was our immediate previous parent company. Examples of the titles were Time, Sports Illustrated, Fortune, People, etc. And so each of them has a very distinct identity, but a lot of the back office
and different needs
and different audiences, and so a lot of the operational infrastructure was shared across.
I see.
By the parent
shared
company.
Resources among
Correct.
all of it. Okay.
Correct.
And so then in what year did Mark and Lynn Benioff acquire Time?
In November of 2018.
Okay. And how has it changed since that acquisition, and what has that been like?
They are... I think it's especially for a brand like Time, which has always led with trust and integrity, to have owners who embody that every single day has really been extraordinary for people. They are just the real deal. They show up to us as they show up in the world, really thinking about social impact. Every conversation with them starts and ends with people and culture and trust and integrity and equality. And I remember when they first came, it was a couple weeks after I started at the end of 2018, they came shortly after the sale, and they stood there in our New York newsroom, and you could feel people's shoulders rolling back, because it was so inspiring to have ownership and owners and these two amazing human beings say that we are here to support you. We're so inspired by the trust and integrity. We are here to help you grow. And it was amazing. And that has been consistent since day one.
That's incredible. And tell me about some of the events that you guys are planning.
One of our most well-known franchises over the past almost 20 years is the Time 100. And that has brought together in late April of every year 100 of the world's most influential people.
In every category.
Across all sorts of sectors. And what's important is that it's not just the 100 most people we like, 100 people we like and are doing quote, good things. It's actually people who are also doing... There are negative influences as much as positive influences, and so it is influential in all of the dimensions.
And who decides who gets invited?
The editors.
Okay.
And so the editors decide who goes, and we have an issue, a print issue that comes together, and obviously mirrored online, the online experience, and then there's an event there that on this one evening in April where it's wonderful. There are performances by some of the members on the list. It's a dinner. There are a series of toasts about what it means to be influential. What's great is that you have Hollywood stars completely freaking out about the scientists and the advocates who are not your typical bold-faced names, but who are changing the world. And it's wonderful to see everyone be such fans of each other and also recognize how much work it takes to get to the top of your field and the responsibility of like, okay, now that we're here, what do we do with this opportunity?
Yeah. Is there an opportunity for like collaboration?
It's what we're looking at right now. Like how do we bring together this Time 100 constellation to do good in the world together if the synergies are there. Last year, for the first time, we did a one-day summit on top of the gala in the evening, and it brought together voices from across the aisle, across all sorts of different sectors, and to really have conversations about what matters in this world. And this year, we're now expanding it to 2 days, which is really exciting.
And it's around the same time?
Yeah, it's around the same time. Yep, April 21st and 22nd.
That is and always in New York.
It has always been in New York to date. You know, we'll think about where it goes from there, but New York has been the hub.
And so, is there anyone that you can't necessarily say who's going to be there this year, but did you get to go last year?
I did. I was really lucky. Yeah.
And so, I noticed that there's a lot of word lucky being thrown around. I don't think that all of this is luck, my love. I think that you've quite earned your spot.
Oh, that's nice of you.
So. Was there anyone that you were just like super nervous about? Because I know that you probably are more informed than the average person around who's in the room as it relates to kind of just various fields because you've had so much exposure.
Yeah.
Was there anyone that you were
lucky.
just like, oh my gosh?
Floored. I will mention two people. One who happens to be a wonderful friend, but Maria Ressa, whom everyone should know if they don't know her already. She is Filipino-American. She lives in Manila, and she runs a media company called Rappler, and has been, she has sought, as we in journalism try to do, she has sought the truth. And because of that has come under a fair bit of persecution. So for her to see her, it was less being intimidated. It was just more to see her in this room amidst all of these extraordinary global influencers stand up and talk about what it means to tell the truth and what it means with her. I mean, you want optimism? She is optimism incarnate. She is just, for everything she's gone through, she's like, telling the truth is what we need to do. And this is our responsibility. And that's how we make change. And so to see her in that room, share that message with that group of people was a moment I'll never forget. I mean, she is very, very special. In terms of other superstars who were there, Khalid performed, so that was really fun. And I love his music. I also love how humble he is and how much joy he brings to the stage. And he was really nervous, and he was so,
I'm sure.
And I think, again, it is that shared humility and understanding of like what it takes. I mean, to watch everyone who by themselves is just a superstar and literally a rock star, be in awe of everyone else. I think that is something that's also really special. You don't see that very often because you see these very carefully curated public personas. And that shared vulnerability was really special. And so he was just like, I was so nervous. I would
imagine so. I mean, obviously this is influencers, and we also talked about social media. I guess it would be the case that you wouldn't probably go on any of these people's Twitter or Instagram account and see like 1,200 followers or something, because people need social media now.
I know.
What if they just were like, oh, let's just quickly research what we find on social media to kind of vet these people, and suddenly you look and you're like, ruh-roh. They have, apparently they're not such influencers after all. No, I'm kind of kidding, but not really. Like it's so weird to me today that someone out of nowhere can become an influencer.
Totally. And I think the definition of influencer, influential predates the influencer, capital I, we see now. That's pivots on social media and followers. So I think they've carried that forward. So I think
the integrity part,
and that you can be making a difference and not be on social at all, right?
Yeah.
And so I think,
and still get to be on this top 100.
Yes, exactly. I think it's one facet that they consider. For example, if you have a huge following, how do you use that platform? You know, is that a place where you've shared messages that have increased the influence on things that you care about, or shared the word, or been courageous, actually, to send your message out to millions of people.
Yeah.
And so
I
that's
can't wait to
one
see who
aspect.
makes the list.
I know, me
this year.
too, me too.
I love that when I was asking you about your job, not on the podcast, you said that you wake up every day and pinch yourself.
Yeah, I do. I really do.
I mean, it's very kind of almost like trendy right now, or just kind of current to talk about gratitude.
Yeah.
It seems like it's been really a part of your DNA always. And a lot of people talk about that that's one of the best ways that you can find happiness, is to just recognize what you have and to be grateful for it.
Yes.
I would imagine that, clearly you have the most kick-ass job
Oh my
ever,
gosh.
and the most kick-ass husband, and you live in the best city in the world. There is a lot.
Seattle's pretty great too.
Seattle's pretty great too. I love New York also. But you have a lot going for you. But I would imagine that this would be your attitude if you were like a barista at Starbucks.
Totally.
You'd probably be the same way, which I just love.
Yeah, that's really nice of you to say. I do feel, and I know I've said lucky so many times, I am so grateful for every opportunity. One of my favorite jobs was, working at the ski resort and teaching climbing, and there, like every single job along the way. And I just think every moment you have, no matter whether it's a job or just being out in the world, is an opportunity to connect with someone. And I've been in a situation, gratefully not as terrible as too many people face if they're bullied or anything else, but that assumptions are made based on a glance, based on preconceived notions, based on fear, based on lots of things outside of your control. And I just feel like I'm such a relentless optimist in the power of human-to-human connection.
I am in the same way. I completely believe in that.
Totally. And I just think that is the opportunity you have every day. And to think that I can do that in this current job, or try my very best to do that, is a real gift. And I do not take that for granted. It's just
I see you do it in the littlest ways. And I haven't spent time with you since we moved to Seattle, hardly at all. And just seeing you we got to see each other this weekend. But I noticed you at the end of dinner go out of your way to walk to thank our server and to say goodbye to the hostess, and make it like an intentional eye-to-eye contact. And then just now getting coffee to talk to the person in the line behind us and the person serving us a coffee, and to kind of ask them about their day. Those are the little things. If you did nothing else, take away Princeton, take away time, take away all of it. The badass athlete, rock climber, photographer, actor. All the slashes, take them all away. And it's so true. It's just like make somebody's day a little bit better and connect with them.
Yeah.
I really love that. So, I want to be mindful of your time, but at the end of my podcast, I always ask people what fuels you, and I think I know your answer, but I'm going to let you articulate it so beautifully as you do.
I don't know about that. I was gratitude and humanity, and we talk about connecting with people. People take a chance on me every day, and I think never taking that for granted, just to say, you know what, it's a choice we have every day to say hello to somebody, and to think what's beating in that heart and where they're going, and no assumptions, no boxes is what I like to say. So it's really gratitude, open mind, open heart, and some optimism along the way.
I love it. I wish I could bottle you and keep you close to me and close to my kids.
Oh my God, your kids are amazing. Shauna's kids are amazing.
That's very sweet.
They have a great mom and dad.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. What a treat.
Such an honor.
So
oh my
fun.
Gosh, what a joy.
Thank you for listening to the What Fuels You podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, and follow us on social media to keep up with the latest news and episodes. You can also contact us at podcast@fueltalent.com to provide feedback, ask questions, and share topics or guests you would like us to cover in the future. We hope you feel inspired by our guests and that we have helped fuel your day. Join us next time for another episode of What Fuels You.